They had already closed the casket when a shout cut through the cemetery like a crack of thunder. Heads turned. Black umbrellas froze midair. And at the edge of the crowd stood a man in an orange vest, breathing hard, eyes wide with fear, yelling words no one expected to hear at a billionaire's funeral. "She's not dead," he cried. "Please, she's not dead." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. What happened next would change lives, rewrite reputations, and remind everyone watching that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Before we begin, if stories of humanity, compassion, and second chances touch your heart, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. This is Kindness Tales, where we believe one small act of kindness can change everything. The woman in the casket was Eleanor Whitmore, a self-made billionaire known across the country. She built a massive waste management empire from nothing, turning trash into treasure, literally. Her name was on skyscrapers, hospitals, and university wings. But despite her wealth, she was known as distant, cold, and fiercely private. Her funeral was exactly what you'd expect for someone like her. Polished marble headstones. A string quartet. Executives in dark suits whispering about stocks and succession. There were no childhood friends, no laughing neighbors, no warm stories shared out loud. Just polite speeches about success, power, and legacy. No one noticed the garbage truck parked across the street until the driver jumped out and ran toward the crowd. His name was Luis Martinez. He'd been a garbage collector for nearly 20 years. Most people barely noticed him as he worked the early morning routes, emptying bins while the city slept. But Eleanor Whitmore had noticed him once. And that moment would echo all the way to this cemetery. Luis pushed past the security guards, holding something in his shaking hands. "You have to listen to me," he begged. "I know this sounds crazy, but she's alive. I heard her. I heard her breathing." The guards grabbed his arms, embarrassed. One of the executives shook his head. "Sir, this is highly inappropriate. Please leave." But Luis wouldn't stop. His voice cracked with desperation. "She saved my life," he said. "Please. Just give me 1 minute. Please." Something in his voice made people pause. The priest hesitated. The guards slowed. And then a woman in the front row stood up. She was Eleanor's lawyer, the person who knew her final wishes better than anyone. "Open the casket," she said quietly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The lid was lifted. At first, there was silence. Then someone screamed. Eleanor Whitmore's fingers twitched. Chaos erupted. Paramedics were called. The funeral turned into a rescue scene. Eleanor was rushed to the hospital, where doctors confirmed the unthinkable. She had suffered from a rare condition that slowed her vital signs to near undetectable levels. She had been alive the entire time. And the only reason she wasn't buried alive was because a garbage collector cared enough to speak up. Days later, when Eleanor finally woke up, the first name she asked for was Luis. She remembered him clearly. Years earlier, Luis had been working a late shift when he found Eleanor sitting alone on a curb behind one of her office buildings. She was soaked from the rain, her expensive shoes muddy, her face empty. She had just lost someone she loved, and the weight of her success suddenly felt meaningless. Luis could have walked past her. Most people did. Instead, he asked if she was okay. She laughed bitterly and said, "Does it look like it?" Luis sat beside her anyway. He offered her half of his sandwich. They talked for 10 minutes. Not about money or business, but about life. About how lonely success can be. About how invisible some people feel. Before leaving, Eleanor thanked him. The next week, Luis found out his daughter's medical bills had been mysteriously paid in full. No note. No recognition. Just kindness, quietly returned. Years passed. Eleanor never told anyone about that night. But she never forgot his face. On the morning of her funeral, Luis had been assigned to clean the street nearby. As the ceremony began, he felt something tug at his chest. A strange feeling. He listened. And he heard it. A faint sound. A breath. Everyone else saw a billionaire in a casket. Luis saw a human being who once sat in the rain with him and shared silence. At the hospital, Eleanor asked to see him alone. When Luis entered the room, he broke down in tears. "I didn't want anything," he said. "I just couldn't walk away." Eleanor took his hand. Weakly, she smiled. "You didn't," she whispered. "You never did." News of the incident spread like wildfire. Headlines praised the miracle, the science, the rare condition. But Eleanor insisted the real story was Luis. At a press conference weeks later, she stood beside him, holding his hand. "People think kindness comes from power," she said. "But real kindness comes from noticing. From caring. From stopping when the world tells you to keep walking." She announced the creation of a foundation in Luis's name, focused on supporting sanitation workers and other unseen heroes. But more importantly, she changed how she lived. Eleanor started showing up. At employee lunches. At community centers. At school she once only funded from afar. She listened more than she spoke. And every time she did, she remembered the man in the orange vest who saved her life simply by caring. Luis went back to work. Same routes. Same early mornings. But now, people waved. Kids smiled. And sometimes, someone would stop him just to say thank you. He always shrugged and said, "I just did what anyone should do." But the truth is, not everyone does. That day at the cemetery reminded the world of something simple and powerful. Kindness doesn't require permission. It doesn't need a title, money, or applause. It only needs courage. And sometimes, it can stop a funeral. As this story comes to an end, remember this: the smallest voice can carry the greatest truth. The simplest act can save a life. Wherever you are, whoever you are, your kindness matters more than you know. So today, notice someone. Speak up. Care a little more. Because you never know whose life you might change, or save, just by being kind.